website. It's actually Google Plus and YouTube. So for those of you who are interested, we'll be covering a little bit of Google Plus, talking a little bit about Hangouts, and then we'll be moving into YouTube and talking a little bit about both of those products and how you can use those as a journalist to help reach your audience. So that's generally speaking what we're going to be talking about today. If you give us just a few minutes, once these gentlemen get this worked out, then we'll get started. Thanks. Perfect. I do the at symbol. That's right. Oh, Alt. Okay, actually need to, let me log in first, because I need, if I can't log in, so is this shift? So if I wanted to do like capital? If I wanted to use like a capital or shift, how do I get into shift? It's just this, right? Yeah, I'm not familiar with this type of keyboard. Just thinking about it. It's a good sign. You know what, we'll use my computer. I don't want to waste any more time because we're all waiting to actually get started here. So if we could actually just switch the projection over. The internet's not working.
You need to change the resolution.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, okay. Now it's good.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll limp along here and hopefully this works okay, unless you guys can get the Wi-Fi working on this one. My name is Nicholas Whitaker. We'll be going over kind of a wide range of topics today. The first thing we're going to start talking about is Google+. Who here has a Google+ account? A few of you. Excellent. So we'll be talking a little bit about Google+, how you as a journalist can use Google+ to help reach your audience. Specifically, what we'll be talking about with Google+ is Hangouts and Hangouts on Air. Who here has done or seen a Hangout before? A few of you? Yeah. Who here has watched a YouTube video before? Okay, that's a good place to start. If you guys have questions and you want to reach out to us, our email address is mediatools@google.com. This is a really useful email. I think a lot of times, for those of you who are actually in my session earlier today, I made the comment that a lot of people think that they can't reach people at Google. I just want to let you know that this email address is for you. It's for journalists to reach us. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you just want to say hi, you can reach out to this at this email address. Also, there's a website here, google.com/mediatools. This is really your one-stop shop for all of the information that you could possibly ever need to know about all the different products that we're going to be talking about today. Oh, good, that's working. Before we get too far into this, I just want to kind of break down a few different things with Google+. I think also one of the comments that I get quite a bit, actually before I get into that, who here speaks English? Excellent, okay. So if I start talking too quickly, just raise your hand, I'll slow down and then start over again. This is a very casual environment. You know, if you have questions or comments, just shout them out. You guys, I know, aren't that shy here in Italy, so feel free to reach out and ask questions if you need. I think a lot of people have the misconception about Google+, that it's just another social media platform, like another Facebook or another Twitter or something like that. And there is a social component to it, and I definitely don't want to diminish that, because the social component to that is very strong. But as a journalist, there's specific features and products that are kind of built in within Google+, that can be used more effectively as a journalist to reach an audience or to help gain more followers. Part of that, we really won't have time to get into today. So there's issues like, or there's products like the communities built in within Google+, which is a very, very strong way to reach people who self-identify as being interested in a particular topic. So whether that be street photography or whether that be investigative journalism, there's communities built in within Google+ of people that have already self-identified as being interested in that you can reach out to them and you can start building more of a community there as well. I'll be sending out, if you're interested in receiving more information, if you email me at mediatools@google.com and you say, I met Nick in Perugia, his presentation was fantastic, he's a really wonderful person, and we'd like more homework, I will send you all of that information to you. And you can always email us, so if you're starting to play around a little bit more with Google+, if you want to find more information about how to really use that as a tool for journalism, you can email me, we can talk a little bit about it, tell me what your project is and what you're trying to do, and I can help steer you in the right direction. Specifically, what we're going to be talking about, though, is Hangouts and Hangouts on Air. So I came from video journalism. I never actually called myself a journalist. I called myself a documentary filmmaker. And I started in short-form documentary, working specifically with advocacy groups, with small local government, and then also worked for different news organizations, creating content over the last decade or so. So my sensibility and really the way I think about things is visual. You know, I come from a visual background, moving images or even still images. Hangouts is kind of the new evolution of that. And I'd say probably about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe even earlier than that, there was this way of talking about the internet. It was like the new democratization of media, right? We're changing the paradigm and the way people are communicating. So instead of it being broadcast, a one-way communication, broadcast, create something, they send it out, viewers consume it, right? It's not like that anymore. There's interaction, and there's these terms like engagement. You guys have probably heard the term engagement before. What does that mean? It's a marketing or a catchword, right? But really what it means is communication. It means talking with people and interacting with people. I think that, especially within the last few years, new technology has come around that makes that engagement easier. Hangouts is one of those things. For those of you who have not used Hangouts before, or Hangouts on Air, what Hangouts is, it's a live video conversation. And what it allows you to do is get up to 10 people into that conversation all at one time. Now, there's Hangouts, and then there's Hangouts on Air. Hangouts, if I have the first 10 people here in this side of the room in a Hangout, we're talking, we're having a great time, we're interacting with one another. No one else in this room can see that. That's a Hangout. It's a private video conference, right? A hangout on air is exactly the same thing, except this conversation that we're having over here can now be broadcast to the entire rest of the room, or the rest of the world for that matter. And I think this is a pretty, I cautiously use the word revolutionary, but I think it's a pretty revolutionary way of interacting with audiences now. So you can have up to 10 people into that conversation at any given time. It's a live video conversation, so whoever's talking at any given time will be the person whose face shows up on that screen. It's full HD now, so it's edge-to-edge HD, 720p. You can have this video if you are using a Hangout on air. One of the other differences between a Hangout on air and a Hangout, when a Hangout on air is being streamed, it's also being streamed live to YouTube. It's also embeddable on your website. So depending on what you're trying to do and who you're trying to reach, even if that person isn't on Google+, or if they're not on YouTube, you can still get access to those people and provide information to them. And there's different ways that you can get them into that conversation, even if they're not one of those 10 people in that actual Hangout. Now, Hangouts on Air, because it's attached to YouTube, automatically saves as a recording in YouTube after the Hangout is over. So you go into your video manager, it behaves very much like a regular YouTube video, so you can download that, you can edit it, you can reshare that. It has analytics that are attached to it as well, so you can see who your audience is, what they're watching, over what period of time. So you really have deep information about your audience then. And then it's also available on multiple platforms. Who here has a smartphone? Who has a tablet? You all have a mobile production studio in your pocket right now, right? And I really want you to think mobile, right? You go out into the street, breaking news is occurring. What is the best camera to have on you? Any camera, exactly. The best camera you can have is the one that you have on you. So oftentimes what we're seeing nowadays, breaking news is happening. It's not necessarily journalists with a giant shoulder-mounted camera and a camera truck on the scene. It's somebody with a smartphone. And they're collecting information out in the street. We use the term citizen journalism a lot. That's a contentious word depending on who you're talking to. But I think the idea here is that the paradigm and the way people are accessing information, the way they're documenting the world around them is changing. So understanding how to use these tools, like an iPad, for example, is really, really useful. Now, iPad photography, I think, is a really interesting market. It's starting to change the way we interact with the world around us. But also, how do you get people into a conversation? How do you interact with them? How do you keep that audience part of that journalistic experience? And that's what really excites me, getting people into those conversations. So this is, again, this is a Hangout. This is the old format of Hangouts. We've changed the look of it recently. But this was the New York Times. They did a series of Hangouts with the Secretary of State, John Kerry. This is him looking a little bit sad over here. But what they did was they embedded this directly within their website. So even if their viewers weren't on Google Plus or on YouTube, they were still able to find and see this right within their main site. And this is actually a really good way, whether it's a Google Plus Hangout on Air rather, or a YouTube video, to drive engagement, to drive more viewers. Embedding this video within your own website to help drive traffic is a really good method. Now, within Hangouts, there's a lot of different apps that you can use. One of those would be called the Q&A app. You might not have seen this before, but the Q&A app, what it allows you to do, it creates a special type of Hangout. This is the new mayor of New York. This is Bill de Blasio. They did a Hangout with him called a Q&A Hangout. You have those 10 participants being pulled in from all over the city, most of them joining in not from a newsroom, not from a studio, but just their living room, right? But the added component to this, all of these comments are coming from people within the comment thread of the Google Plus post or the YouTube post. And the great thing about this is if you've ever been to Reddit or another website where you can post a comment, you can vote those comments up and down, the Q&A app works very much the same way. So if somebody wants to add their comment in here, the other participants in the comment thread can vote these questions up and down. Whichever question is up on top, the host of the Hangout can select that question and use that as a pivot point for more conversation. So it's another way to pull your audience in, to pull people into that conversation and give them a voice, which I think is really, really critical.
Who can see those comments? Can everybody on the chat see the comments and see if you
Sure. That's actually a really good question. So the question was, how many people can actually see that? So if you're watching this Hangout and you're participating in this Hangout experience, this sidebar is visible to anybody that comes to that Google Plus page to that Google Plus Hangout. There are filters within this, so if you have regular trolls that are, putting, expletives or whatever, those are manageable, so you can actually weed those questions out, and there's some certain filters that are already included in there, so you don't end up distracting from the actual conversation. But as the host, you have an enormous amount of control over this experience to make sure that that conversation is moving ahead, that it is valuable, and not just people giving people a hard time. So that's the Q&A. No. So it's anybody. So you just viewing and watching this would see those questions too. In Google Plus or in YouTube too? Or even wherever you're embedding it. Okay. Yep. So his question was, who in general is seeing it? It's literally anybody that's coming to that page. And this Q&A app actually creates a special type of event page that looks similar to a normal Google Plus Hangout, but it includes the sidebar here. And really the idea behind this is including people that aren't necessarily in the Hangout itself, but people coming from those comment threads and whatnot. Where do you launch that when you're launching the Hangout? So the question is, where do you launch that when you're actually starting that Hangout? There's a special type of URL that's slightly different than the normal Hangout experience. Part of those documents that I'll send around to you includes a little breakdown on the Q&A app. So the workflow as far as starting that is a little bit different, but as far as the user experience, it's almost exactly the same with just the added addition of that sidebar there. Very good questions. Another app that you might be interested in. One of the great things about working for Google, especially working with the Google Plus team, I get feedback constantly from journalists. We see these different Hangouts, they start working with a particular product, and it's like, oh, it would be really good if it did this, or oh, this particular feature doesn't really work that well. We take that feedback, I then go back to the engineering team, and I sit down with them and I explain to them, this app is great, except it doesn't do this well, it doesn't do that well. And this app is actually one result that came directly out of those conversations. So we were working with a lot of journalists, these different Hangouts were occurring, and what feedback we were getting was that we didn't have enough control over the volume of participants as they were joining the Hangout. What if you have an unruly participant? You want to kick them out of the Hangout. There was no option for that. Or let's say, for example, someone's coming from a low bandwidth environment. They just have poor internet connection, which happens quite a bit around the world. In that case, we wanted to have options to allow people to help control that experience. So that's where the control room app came from. And the control room app works very similarly to what a control room would work like in a real broadcast environment. It gives you the ability to, as the host, to mute other people's microphones. You can mute other people's cameras, so you can turn their camera on and off. You can eject people out of the Hangout if you want to. And this works in a couple ways. Let's say you just have a troll in your Hangout. You can kick them out that way. Or let's say you want to invite more than 10 people into that Hangout. Well, what you can do is you can do kind of a radio call-in show style. You have 10 people lined up. You have another 10 people lined up after that. Once that actual conversation is done, thank you very much. It's been great talking to you. Next caller. And then you kick the person out. You invite a new person in. So it gives you more capability to include more people into that conversation. In addition to that, you can change people's volume levels. So if you notice that somebody, like maybe this girl right here, she's in a loud environment in the background, you can ramp her volume up and down so that you have the best possible audio experience. Also, the bandwidth setting here. So let's say, for example, that somebody is joining from a mobile device in a bad connection area. Instead of forcing them to stay in an HD environment, you can actually move them from HD to standard definition to just audio only. So you can bring people in even if they're just joining via a voice call. And I actually do this quite a bit with my mom. So she lives in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. I gave her a smartphone not too long ago. So she drives down to the end of the mile-long driveway where I grew up. She gets to where she has a cell phone signal. She joins into a conversation. I immediately move her bandwidth all the way down to just audio only, and then we can have a conversation with one another without it being a huge, big issue. So if my mom can use Hangouts, you all can definitely use Hangouts. Here's another example. So this is a terrible photo of me. And I'll explain why I did that early in a little bit. But really what I'm highlighting here is what's called the Hangout Toolbox app. And what that allows you to do is add things like lower thirds in here. If you guys want to pull some of these chairs out from over here, I'm not using them. Over here, the Hangout Toolbox app allows you to do lower thirds. Do you guys say lower thirds in Italy? What do you call it? There you go. Also, Chiron might be another way of saying it. But basically, a lower third. Who am I? Where do I work? You can save these as lower thirds. You can also add logos. You can add overlays. So if you want to design that Hangout experience to look more like your design aesthetic for your website, it makes it very easy to do that. And you don't have to keep doing these over and over again. You can actually save these as presets. So let's say I'm doing a series of Hangouts over an entire week. A different show for a different topic. I can save each one of those lower thirds. I can save each one of those overlays and have those ready-made for me. And again, as well as the other homework that I'll send you some templates so you know exactly what dimensions to work with. And if you have questions about any of that stuff, you can always email me as well. That's the Hangout Toolbox app. Also, Hangouts, again, because it's tied to YouTube and it's tied to all of these other products, one of those products is analytics. I think as a journalist, as a content creator, one of the most important questions that you could be asking yourself is, who is my audience? Where are they watching my content? Over what period of time? Are they watching the entire video, or are they jumping out early? This helps you guide your content to make sure that you're creating content that your viewer actually wants to watch. Turns out this is not my analytics, but if you look at this is a live Hangout. So there's a lot of viewership right off the bat, and then you have what's called a long tail of viewership afterwards. So promoting your Hangout is really important, both before, during, and after the Hangout. I wouldn't think of these Hangouts as one-off events. I would think of them as an asset that you've created that you want to nurture and you want to keep growing, right? So promoting it, cross-promoting it, making sure that people can actually see this and use this over a period of time is really important. I have examples that I'll tell you about too. So one of the examples that I would mention is Al Jazeera. And I think they do a really good job of using Hangouts. So they have a couple different things that they use. They have this editorial option that they use. They use the hashtag #OpenEditorial. And what they do is they encourage their readers to send in their comments. What stories are we covering? What stories could we cover better? Do you have ideas for a story? They then take the top 10 or so best examples. They invite those people into a Hangout and give people the opportunity to then pitch their story idea. And then after the fact, they do the most important step. They actually do those stories. I think this is pure engagement. It gives readers the ability to participate in that journalistic experience, and you're not alienating them. You know, you're not treating it as that old broadcast method where you're just sending stuff out and hoping that it sticks. You're actually interacting with your audience. Here's another example. So this is Nancy Liu from WGN9 in Chicago. She had a mobile device in her pocket. In a courtroom, you can't necessarily always bring a shoulder-mounted camera, but what you can bring into a courtroom often is a cell phone, right? So the sentence was given. She steps out of the courtroom, right outside the courtroom doors, and covers breaking news as it's happening. And Nancy Lee, I'm sorry, her name's Nancy Lee. Nancy Lee actually does an amazing job. She actually won an Emmy recently, and if I had internet access, I could actually show you. She has a video that goes through and explains what she's doing using different technology to interact with her audience in a multimedia world. So if you want to check out somebody that's really doing an amazing job with that, check out Nancy Lee from WGN9 in Chicago. If you just search Emmy Award winner 2013 for interactive reporting, you'll be able to pull up her video. But again, it's a really good example. And I'll send the URL to you guys as well. If you're interested, mediatools@google.com, I'll share that with you so you can check that out. Now, there's a lot of technical considerations that you need to think about. For those of you who aren't in the broadcast or the video world, there's certain things that you need to think about. First of all, bandwidth. Bandwidth is always going to be an issue whenever you're talking about video, especially when you're talking about interactive video. One thing that you want to pay attention to, for each individual that you have in that Hangout, you want to have, roughly speaking, 1.5 megabits per second up and down speed, upload and download speed. So for each additional person you have in the Hangout, so if you have 10 people, that's 10 times 1.5. So it's just something to think about. Now, most of you who have a mobile phone, if you have 3G or 4G connection, that's a fast enough speed to be able to get somebody into a Hangout. I would, however, recommend whenever you have the ability to, especially if you're the host of the Hangout, to be using hardwire internet. Hardwire internet, just in general, is going to be a more stable experience. It's going to give you overall a better broadcast and a more professional look. A lot of times, I would say about 95% of the time, whenever somebody has a problem with a Hangout, either with audio lag or dropouts or video being weird, video being strange, most of the time that's because of the connectivity issue. It's just their bandwidth isn't fast enough. And even if you're plugged into Ethernet, what you might find is that a firewall that's set up is actually slowing down your internet connection. So if you're in a newsroom, make friends with your IT person. They don't make friends very regularly, so go down to the basement, find where they are, bring them some cookies, have a nice conversation with them, and just make sure that that bandwidth is not being throttled by a firewall. Again, because I come from the video world, I'm constantly thinking of what camera can I use that's the least expensive, that can get me the highest quality. Also, I think a lot about audio, and I would definitely encourage you folks to think about audio first. Some people might argue with me on this, but I would say that as a video creator, people will forgive bad video. They will. They'll watch a crappy looking video. What they won't do is forgive bad audio. If you can't hear the audio, if you can't follow along what somebody's saying, they will move on to something else. My friend here is nodding. So he approves. I think this is a really big key, and I think this is something that people overlook quite a bit. So I've created kits for you. So if you're interested in upgrading your experience, and again, I'll just show you this one as a reminder. See this horrible photo of me? The reason that this photo is so terrible, I took this on actually this very same laptop. I was in a conference room with overhead lighting. It was a very quick shot. I'm lit by the computer screen, so I had this blue, weird glow going on. This is not a flattering look for anybody, especially somebody with no hair. So I would make sure that if you're doing something like this, what I would recommend doing is using something like an external camera. Now, I've tested literally hundreds of different cameras to find the best ones that work for these particular applications. In this case, the Logitech C920 camera, I think, is one of the best cameras that you can buy right now on the market. It's a full HD capable camera with a built-in stereo audio built into the camera itself. It costs about $70 US, and it fits into your pocket. Now, the good thing about this camera as well is it's got a little, what's called a quarter 20 tap in the bottom of that. It might actually be different in metric, but really what a quarter 20 tap is, just that screw hole that you see in the bottom of the camera. So what that allows you to do is it allows you to take this camera and attach it to a tripod. I'm a huge fan of GorillaPods. I think that these are probably one of the coolest inventions made for photography in the last several years. You can wrap it around a pole. You can put it on top of your car. You can put it on top of a person if you need to. You could put it wherever you need to. But they're really small and they're really portable and light. Blue Snowball microphones. I think that these are really great too. Again, I've tested a bunch of these. I think Blue is one of the better companies that makes USB microphones. The interesting thing about these is it doesn't require any software. You plug it in via USB and you're done, right? And you can select these as options within the Hangout, so you can change which camera you're using. You can change which audio input you're using. Blue also makes another one called the Snowflake, which is teeny tiny, and it actually clips right on the top of your monitor. So if you really want a tiny portable solution, that's another one. I'll also mention too that Blue makes a device that plugs into the top of your cell phone. So if you're using your phone, as I see a lot of journalists doing, as an audio recording device, Blue actually creates this little microphone. It's a cardioid microphone. It plugs right into the top of your phone and gives you increased audio capability. Rode, R-O-D-E, is another company that makes those. They're a little bit more expensive. He's got one right there. You cannot? What about Amazon? There you go. Yeah. So I will share with you. Oh, he was just asking. He said you can't buy that in Italy, but there's a wonderful thing called the internet where you can buy things from all around the world, and they will send you things in the mail. It's fantastic. So Google Shopping is really good. Also, Amazon.com. Also, B&H. It's kind of like my go-to store. It's in New York. I used to live there. Never go there without a chaperone because you will end up spending thousands and thousands of dollars. But it's a really good resource. And I will send you, if you're interested, I will send you a shopping list that has links to all of these different devices in there, as well as a whole bunch of other suggestions all the way up and down the product line. So there's that. Another thing that I would recommend too would be the lighting kit of some sort. Remember that bright red face that I had in that last shot? The reason I had that looked that way is because I was being lit from really weird overhead lighting. Having a controlled lighting source is definitely one of the biggest things that will improve your overall video production quality. So what I recommend, these VidPro professional lights, the reason I like these so much is that they have a wall plug, so you can just plug it into a wall and power it that way, or you can plug in rechargeable batteries so that you don't have to worry about, do I have power or not? And they're really, really powerful in general as far as the amount of light that they give off. They also have these two gels that magnetize right to the front of the light, so it'll automatically balance for daylight or for tungsten lighting, and you also have a diffuser on there as well. That particular light is about $120 or so. You don't need to spend that much money, though, for a good LED light. The more bulbs you have, the more expensive the light gets. But I've seen some, in the US, they've got a store called Bed Bath & Beyond, which is basically like, it's where you go buy your bath rugs and your plungers and things like that. They also sell these little clip-on LED lights for makeup that you can actually just clip right to a mirror or right to your computer, and that works just as well. And it also just fits right in your pocket. The most expensive part of this entire kit is actually the case. This is a Pelican case. It just makes you look more professional. It floats in case you like end up in the water someplace. So you can use it as a flotation device if you want. Speaking about mobile, I think, again, mobile is the name of the game right now. You all have a mobile phone. Most of you have a mobile phone with a really fantastic camera on them. The audio quality just across the board on mobile phones is terrible as far as doing mobile field recording. So what I would recommend doing is either using one of those plug-in microphones like I was mentioning earlier, or you could do something like this. So this is a super cheap kit that I created. This handle right here is about 5 or 6 euros. This is about a 10 or 15 euro widget, and what that allows you to do is connect your camera to the top of the handle, and that gives you a stabilization device to help balance that image, so you're not having that shaky camera effect. You can also screw this right into the bottom of a tripod as well. So you have your camera, you can now mount your camera to a tripod, and you're off and running. On that shopping list that I also have a collapsible tripod. You guys ever see the tent poles for a camping tent? You know, those really thin metal ones? The tripod is actually made out of tent poles, so it looks exactly like this, but about 10 times as narrow. You can actually fit it in your back pocket, and it just like collapses into a tripod. It weighs next to nothing, and you can fit it in your backpack. And it's perfect for this kind of device. Beyond that, audio is going to be really important. So having some sort of a splitter. Having a recording device is great, but if you're not monitoring what you're recording, you might as well not be recording at all. You could be recording traffic outside instead of actually recording the person that you're trying to talk to. So having a splitter, this is called a Moji splitter. One part goes out to a set of headphones so you can monitor it. The other one goes out to a microphone. This is a lavalier microphone by Rode, R-O-D-E. This one is about $129, but you could spend hundreds of dollars if you want to on these, or you could spend a few, like $10 or $20 if you want. So there's different price ranges. It just depends on what kind of audio quality you're looking for. But again, this whole kit, this is under 100 euros for this thing. And I think this is a really good mobile recording system. Again, it all fits within your pocket. You can go out in the field, gather professional level audio, and conduct hangouts from the field. Now, you might not want to use a web camera with somebody that's a very high profile individual. So if you're doing a hangout with the president, you might want to use something better than a web camera, perhaps a professional level quality camera. The question always is, how do you then get that into a hangout? Well, I've created a workflow for you for that as well. There's different pieces of kit that you can buy. This one's called an XT, AJAIOXT. It's just an input-output device. It allows you to take a signal in via HDMI or HD SDI into this device and then into a hangout via Thunderbolt. Also, there's a USB interface, so you could take it from a soundboard, you could take it from a sound truck, you could take it from a professional XLR microphone, or an RCA input, or an optical audio input, into this device. It allows you to control those audio levels from that device instead of being dependent on the volume control of your laptop. And then that goes in via USB. Now, there's also another device called a scan converter. And what that allows you to do is take that image out of the computer. It scans the screen, exports it, and then you can actually take that through into a video switcher. You could take that into a video truck if you need to, or whatever you want. And it actually allows you to do a couple different things. Now, I mentioned homework. Everyone loves homework. I'm going to be presenting you a whole list of different guides here. So if you email me at mediatools@google.com and you say, I loved Nick's presentation, he's really fantastic, you know, I want to read more, I will send you this. You'll get a Google Drive folder, which contains a whole bunch of information about the Engage and Distribute presentation, which is what we're talking about now. There's also a little bit more information about research, and you'll get this cheat sheet right here that goes into great detail about all of the different topics that we've been talking about today. It also includes all of these different guides. So the kit guide that I was talking about earlier includes a shopping list, a guide on how to host a broadcast quality Hangout on air. So what makes for a good host? What do you need to know as the host of a Hangout to keep that conversation moving, to make it compelling? How to source participants for a Hangout on air. So how do you find good people to have conversations with? What considerations you need to talk to them about ahead of time as far as bandwidth and audio and video. How to promote a Hangout on air. How do you get more eyeballs on your video? You know, that's always really important. And that doesn't just stop when the Hangout's over. Promoting actually continues on after the Hangout's done as well. Also, how to broadcast a Hangout on air and a Google Plus Hangout on air guide. So there's a lot of information there. Here's some examples. So with Google Plus, I think the two groups that I would really pay a lot of attention. Is anybody from Huffington Post here today? No. Very good. Not yet. So what I would do is I would look at Huffington Post Live and Al Jazeera's The Stream. These are two of the agencies that I think are doing the best job with Hangouts. Huffington Post Live, they do roughly 100 Hangouts a week. That's a lot of Hangouts. And they do that using Hangouts, not Hangouts on air. And the reason that they do that is they want even more control over that experience. They record those Hangouts ahead of time, and then they'll edit those down into the most salient bits. So instead of recording for 2 hours and then just posting that, they'll create sizzle reels or like little small segments, break those up, and then send those out as needed. Al Jazeera, The Stream, I think that they do another really good example. What Al Jazeera, The Stream does, they just use Hangouts as another way to get people into that conversation. So whether that's a Hangout, whether that's a Skype, whether that's FaceTime, whether that's an actual in-studio camera, that's what they use to bring those people into that conversation. And that's really the way I would think about that as well. How do I get my user, how do I get the reader or the viewer access to new voices that haven't had voices before? So again, I work for Google, but I would not think of these products as working in isolation of one another. It's a whole ecosystem of different products by different companies, and that's really the way I kind of approach all this. How do you integrate these different products with one another to get the most use out of it? Okay, that's Al Jazeera. Here's another example. So YouTube for journalists. This is an enormous amount of information that we're going to try to cover in, well, my watch stopped. So what time is it actually?
About 3, I think.
Are you right? 3? 10 past 5. Okay. So we have about, about a half hour or so? Is that right? Yeah, we have about a half hour. So we're going to blast through an hour and a half presentation in a half hour. So if you need additional information, I will provide this particular presentation to you after the fact. So if you miss anything, you can relax. It's okay. But over here, what we'll talk about is a little bit about the platform of YouTube, what makes for a good audience, talk about the technology itself, and talk about the Creators Program. We'll talk a little bit about the Partner Program. What is the life cycle of a news video on YouTube? We'll talk a little bit about tools, resources, and we'll actually have time for questions after the fact. So really quickly, YouTube, you guys have probably all seen YouTube videos. It's an amazingly growing field of journalism. It's about 1 billion unique visitors or users per month. You have about 80% of those viewers are outside of the US, which is a lot. roughly speaking, this reaches more 18 to 34-year-olds than just about any other platform, including broadcast television. And this actually comes right from Nielsen and Pew. About 1/3 of those searches on YouTube are news-related, which I think is fantastic. I guess the other third of those are probably cat videos and things like that. But news videos, I think, is really what's most relevant to you. Reaching your audience and reaching them where they're watching their content is very, very important. Most viewers these days, about 2 years ago, it was about 6% of YouTube traffic was mobile. Now it's closer to 40%. That's a lot of traffic on mobile devices. So thinking about where your audience is and thinking about how they're consuming your content and how they're interacting with you, I think is really, really important. Again, about 350 million app downloads on iOS. There's about 500 million or so on mobile phones in general, including smart TVs. Again, about 40% of that is being watched on mobile. So thinking about that when you're creating content is really important. We've worked with a lot of news agencies around the world. We're averaging about 5,000 news partners right now using YouTube as a platform. And when I say using YouTube as a platform, it's really important to think of it not as just a place to kind of deposit your videos that you've created elsewhere, but really thinking about it as a live environment, interacting with people on there, being an active participant in that conversation. Time and time again, I talk to news broadcasters or media, and they say, oh, we have a YouTube account, we're throwing videos up there all the time, but we just don't have any interaction and engagement. And I say, how much time are you spending on YouTube as an active participant? Are you commenting in the comment threads? Are you working with your affiliates and embedding those videos elsewhere? Most of the time they say, no, we haven't really gotten there yet. And that's typically speaking what the issue is. Okay. So again, we'll talk a little bit about building a home and what that looks like. We'll talk a little bit about news formats at work. And this breaks down into a few different categories. Uploading, that includes search and discovery. So how do people even find your content in the first place? How do you promote and retain viewership? And then how do you measure your success? If you're sending out videos, but you're not really checking up and seeing who your audience is and what's working and what's not, you're kind of wasting a lot of your time. So making sure that you're measuring success is really important. And this is really where we'll start, creating a home for yourself online. Again, if you go to my own YouTube page, that's exactly the example of what not to do with a YouTube page. As a video journalist, I spent, a long time creating videos. I was using YouTube as my demo reel, so I would put videos up there, and I would just store them on YouTube, and then hope that somebody stumbled upon them and thought that I was really great. That's not the way to do it. What I would recommend doing is actually creating a brand and content. So this is BuzzFeed. They have a banner up at the top here that they've created. It's very easy to recognize whose news channel this is. Also, their logo fits right within that. So whether they're commenting in the comment thread, if they're on Google Plus commenting elsewhere, that logo keeps showing up over and over again, and it's consistent across all of those different channels. Consistency is really important. Also, they have different buttons here so people can follow them on Facebook, that you can follow people on Twitter, and so on. So linking your social accounts to your brand page is really important. I would think of this as your name card or your business card, right? So are people approaching you and getting all the information that they need in order to be able to find where else your content is online? Adding your URL in the description down here for where your website is. Having subscribe buttons appear as important as well. And then also paying attention to these different ways that you can organize these videos and information. In this case, creating playlists around particular channels that you're creating, or creating different methods for people to be able to find your content. Curating your content for people so that when they approach your channel, you're really creating a presence for them that is doing a good job of reflecting who you are as a news organization or as a journalist. This is actually Russ Gossett from NPR created this really great visualization that really breaks down 9 of the most successful videos on YouTube. He breaks those down into these categories. Place explainers, which is really kind of, as it describes, it's explaining a place, kind of talking about a particular region. Those are really popular. Crowd pleasers, going local is a big part of this, so making sure that if you are in a local market, you're representing your local community and you're interacting with those people. I use the analogy of going to a party, right? So if you walk into a party, You don't just go and stand over by the food table and expect like amazing things to happen. You go introduce yourself to people, you interact with them, you talk about things that people care about. Curiosity stimulators, news explainers, which is really what fits in quite a bit with what you guys are probably doing as well. Helping curate the news or take a different spin or take on the news and providing that to your viewers in a personalized way. Niche markets, I think, are really, really key with this as well. So, if you have a specific area of expertise or a specific view on news, re-explaining what's happening in the real world in a short video is sometimes really good. Breaking news is also really key. Then there's always the feel-good smilers, the fun videos that are easy to share that people like a lot. Topical buzzers, provocative controversies, and awe-inspiring visuals. So these are the big buckets that we're looking at. So when you're thinking about creating content, what we found, statistically speaking, creating packages of news that really work for those particular formats is important, and you don't necessarily have to do all 9 of these different formats. Pick what works best for your particular type of content and audience, and really massage that until you get something that's really effective. We find that the most successful news pieces that really find a global audience are shareable, emotional, topical, and have broad appeal. So this is one example. This video called Band of Brothers. This poor kid, he was being bullied in school. A bunch of other children around his same age kind of banded around him and like helped encourage him to stick it through and be okay. And that got picked up on news, got shared widely. This was a topical story because there was a lot of discussions going on around cyberbullying at this period in time. This was put up on Channel 5 ABC. They put this up embedded this on their website and then shared across their other affiliates, and it went viral within a few days. And the reason that went so viral is because it's shareable, emotional, topical, and has broad appeal. Here's another example. Vice News, again, I think Vice News is really amazing in some of the work that they're doing. I think they're really changing the face of how journalism is seen. They're doing a lot of long-form documentaries as well as short-form, but they do these daily roundups. They're roughly about 30 seconds long, highlighting the news of the day. Again, packaging that news and packaging in a way that your readers can understand. It can be from a comical standpoint, it can be from a satirical standpoint, it can be from a deadly serious standpoint. Just depends on who your audience is that you're trying to reach. But allowing users to get the news they want in a digestible form is really the key here. Creating small packaged content, you can even link back to longer form articles if you want, but like how many of you have time to sit down and watch a 15 or 20-minute long news piece? One. I try to, but in all likelihood, you're probably just going to be watching it in bite-sized formats. There's arguments for and against that on either side of the field. Yeah, no, they do amazing stuff. Tim Pool and a few other journalists within Vice are really doing some groundbreaking work, both in short and long form. And really what they do is they create these teaser videos, and then they tie those or link those to their long form formats. So over the course of a week, you have 5 or 6 different teaser videos that are 30 seconds long or 60 seconds long, and then you link back to your hour-long piece that goes in more depth into this particular topic. This is a really good way to create an ecosystem of videos around a particular issue or around a particular brand that people can share. And again, remembering mobile viewership represents about 40% of these views. So packaging it in a way, even down to the shot choices that you're making and the edit choices that you're making, to make sure that if you're watching that on a tiny mobile device that's probably less than 7 inches in size, that it's viewable, right, and that it makes sense. So close-ups work really well. Faces are really compelling. If you're doing broad, landscape shots, that's probably not going to translate quite as well on mobile unless you have one of these giant phablets that I see people using. But again, these are just some examples. That's not to discount long form. And again, as we were just talking about earlier, Vice does a really good example of this. Newsy has another one too. They do short documentaries covering specific topics. This one was covering the clash of gun cultures in Minnesota, I believe. So a long format documentary, we call this an evergreen piece. So this is a piece that you put up over a long period of time, you'll build viewership and build readers. You kind of have that on your channel or you have that in your playlist, and you link other short-form videos to that channel to create immediate interest, but people will find those long-form videos, and you can always link back to those in articles later on. Hey, by the way, we covered this topic earlier in this piece 2 months ago. For more information on this, check out our video here. Creating and packaging formats that work. Live broadcasts always is a really good way of doing this as well. So there's a couple different ways of looking at this. Channel 5's Ukraine process footage, they basically, the government cut off their TV broadcast. They weren't able to broadcast their news coverage anymore, so they turned to YouTube, they upload that, and within a very short period of time, they get 200,000 plus views on this particular news piece. You share that via social media, via Twitter, and Facebook, and Google+, and YouTube. You get more viewers, you get more people following that particular story. Here's another example. This is Wendy Davis in the U.S. There's a filibuster over a women's right to choose. They did a live stream, and again, this went viral within a few days. And they have over 1.5 million views on this particular video, where if they would have just posted that maybe on their website or maybe just done it as a broadcast, it would have been done and over with. This is a really good way to continue generating additional interest around particular issues. Now, the key with this is metadata, right? It's packaging your content in a way that people can find it and doing it in a way that's easy to find. So here's an example. These are 3 of the exact same news stories. In this case, this is Vice News, I think this is Russia Today, and this is BBC. Now, the reason that this one is ranking up here at the top with a little over 12,000 views has to do with a few things. The first thing is titles, right? Creating a good title that's catchy, that makes sense, that's clear and easy to understand. Keywording as well, making sure that when you're putting a description together, it's including good keywords so that makes it easy for somebody who's going online and searching for something to find it. Most people who are accessing information on YouTube or Google search, they're not typing in Vice News, going to the channel, and then seeing what's going on that day. They're putting it right into the search bar. If you're in my session earlier today, we were talking about keywords. We were talking about using Google Trends. What words are people using to talk about a particular topic? Right? What keywords do you want to embed within your descriptions, within your titles, within your headlines to make sure people can find those? Another component to this is immediacy, right? Getting that story out quickly, getting it out accurately with strong metadata will almost always guarantee success over somebody that like 2 or 3 days later decides to do a piece on the same issue, right? So being current, being quick about it is really key. Now, beyond that, recency, it kind of ties to this as well. This is another example. I don't know if you guys saw this news piece. There was an earthquake in Los Angeles. There was a newscaster on air. I think it's fun and sad at the same time. We can laugh at it because no one got hurt after the fact. But you look at this, the newscaster was like, oh, there's something happening. It went viral. Everybody loved it. The reason that this one was so popular was because of how recent it was. And if you look at this, 10 hours ago, 7 hours ago, 4 years ago, right? So obviously this isn't ranking very highly. This one's ranking even lower. This one has over 1.5 million views because it happened almost immediately after the event. And if you look really closely, KTLA King is the person that actually posted this. So he's getting a lot of the traffic and viewership on this because of how quickly he uploaded it. So as breaking news is happening, after you make sure that you're safe and after you make sure that you got the shot, get it uploaded online as quickly as possible with good metadata, good descriptions, and good tagging. If you're working in a larger news agency, creating a good content management system that works really well with this and creating templates that makes it easy to upload these videos quickly and accurately is really kind of part of it. If you're not part of a large news agency, what I recommend doing is creating documents that will help you. So either a spreadsheet or some kind of a templatized thing so you don't have to go through and figure out what are my keywords for this particular issue, what are the links that I need to put in there. You already have them all saved. Copy them, paste them into the YouTube description, and upload them, and then you've got the scoop on people. Again, with news, it's all about the scoop, right? Who gets the story out there faster. The same thing applies on YouTube. It's basically the same skill set. which ties to watch time. So again, search and discovery. How do you link different videos together in a way that makes sense? In this case, YouTube's recommendation algorithm will choose videos that kick off binge watching. You have probably all done this. You go to YouTube, you watch a video, you click on another link, you click on another link, and then 5 hours later you realize you've got nothing done for the day except watching really great content. So with this, this is a good example, Radiolab by WNYC. What they did is they created a couple of videos that really were kind of anchor videos to tie to larger playlists. And the idea behind this is you click on this video and then there's a whole other string of additional videos that I might be interested in. And you can do this with annotation at the end of the video. You can click another video within that link. You can go on to another one. You can do that within the descriptions. There's a lot of different ways to do this, even within playlists. If you want more information on this, I'll share with you a playbook, which will take you through basically all of these different tips and tricks. But this is just kind of a broad overview to kind of give you an idea. Thinking about user behavior is really the big thing here. When a user comes to YouTube to look for a video, what are they going to do next? Do you want to keep them on your YouTube page, or do you want to bounce them off somewhere else? Ideally, you would keep them on YouTube so they would continue watching more videos, and even more importantly, if you've monetized your videos, they might click on one of those ads, right? Here's another example, engagement. Again, here's this word engagement. We could just kind of transpose that word with communication and interaction. Engaging with your audience will equal an increase in view counts with likes, shares, subscribers, and comments. And all of these different metrics might mean something different to you. But really, I think the key here is what quality of interaction do you have? It's not so much how many likes and clicks that you have, but do you have real engagement interaction? Are people sharing your content? That's really, I think, the key here. Now, this is the Young Turks. I don't have internet access on my computer, so I can't show you the video, but I'll send you the link to it afterwards. But what they did in this particular video, the hosts of Young Turks, they sent out, it's basically an Ask Me Anything session. People could ask questions of the host of Young Turks, get them to interact with the audience via Twitter. They then do a YouTube video answering those questions, and it's actually a really hysterical video. But this creates a lot of interaction because you're directly breaking that third wall, directly addressing your audience, and giving them a mechanism to interact with you. Again, there's different ways to look at this. You can focus on converting a viewer to a subscriber. I think that's a real big key. You will see more traffic if you can get somebody to subscribe to your page. That will keep bringing them back over and over again because they get updates and alerts when there's new videos being brought out. Using annotations and calls to actions to drive subscribers. And you guys have probably seen this. If you watch any of the most popular YouTube videos, it's all the same thing at the end. It's like click a link here, comment down below, subscribe to my page, like this video, and so on. Those calls to actions are priceless. You cannot possibly put enough value on them. As I mentioned in my last session, people love to be told what to do, right? So if you give them breadcrumbs, if you tell them what to do after they've watched this video, time and time again, they will follow those instructions for a couple different reasons. People want to be helpful, right? It's the same thing if you go to a restaurant. I was actually just at the Argentinian restaurant that's here in town. I don't know if you guys have tried that place yet. It's amazing. If you like meat, check it out. If you're vegetarian, they also have good vegetarian options. But the first thing that he did as I was leaving, I said, this was a fantastic meal. I haven't had a good meal like this since I was in Argentina last. He handed me a little card that requested me to sign up on TripAdvisor and give a recommendation. And guess what I did when I got back to my hotel room? Slept. That was after. I gave him a recommendation on TripAdvisor. I don't sleep. But yeah, I gave him a recommendation. And then leveraging social media to help promote your videos. I can't tell you enough how important this is. Again, these things don't happen in isolation. These videos aren't in a vacuum. It's part of a wider ecosystem of other social media. So sharing across different platforms and different channels, and don't be afraid to send the same video out multiple times. Again, on Twitter or Facebook or Google+, people aren't just sitting there staring. Well, some people are, but most people aren't sitting there staring at that page all of the time. So if you send out a tweet or you send out a Google+ post about a particular video, 90% of the time, your audience might not see that right off the bat, especially if they're not subscribed to you. So having, over a period of time, several different posts is really, really important. I'm getting the signal that I'm running out of time, but I just wanted to mention as well, embedding these videos on your website is also really key, especially if you have other partners that you work with. So posting videos across different platforms I think is really, really important, but then also partnering with other people. So figure out who your key trendsetters are in your particular industry. Find out who the amplifiers of your signal are, and interact with those people to make sure that they're helping to share your content, even if it comes down to just embedding your video on a page. This example, this was the house on Wade Avenue by WUNC. They embedded this originally on NPR. That's that green line here. And then Fox News Now picked that up and then started sharing that around as well. That's that red line. So going into the analytics, you see there's a lot of interaction, a lot of engagement there because they've embedded that directly within their website and not relied strictly on YouTube in order to help get that traffic. Analytics, again, are another big part of that. Paying attention to who's watching your videos over what period of time is really, really key. Analytics, you can spend an entire month learning analytics. But if you have additional questions about that, I'm happy to go over that for you. Tied to that would be ad formats. You know, it comes in a couple different flavors. There's the pop-up one that you see right here, which is the overlay, which you have to watch and then click the little X to get rid of. An amazing amount of engagement using those ads, especially if you're using them correctly. And then in-stream ads are useful as well. So before the video starts, you get an in-stream ad. It plays ahead of time. You get a lot of traction and engagement for that as well. And it's also a really good way to make money off of your particular pieces. Last thing, I swear. We started late, so I get a few extra minutes. The other thing that I would mention here is YouTube Trends. So if you go to youtube.com/trends, this is a really useful website to figure out who's watching what in what places. There's the YouTube's map, which unfortunately right now is only available in the US. But if you go to the YouTube dashboard, what it allows you to do is look over specific regions, across different age groups, and across different genders, and see who's watching what. You know, what are people interested in? So as a research tool, as a journalist, in conjunction with Google Trends, which some of you may have seen earlier in my first presentation, I would be taking a look at this to see what are people interested in? What are people watching? Is there a way for me as a journalist to capitalize on that and create a video that's related to whatever this trending topic is? In addition to that, I've got all of these different links for you. Again, if you email me at mediatools@google.com, I will share all of these with you, including the strategies blog post that we were talking about earlier that NPR created. There's a YouTube Help Center, the YouTube Playbook, which goes into great detail about how to use YouTube in more detail so that you as a journalist can be leveraging this to the best of your ability. How to integrate that within Google News, and also a list of the best news videos that we've collected so far. Got it? All right. Last on. Get that shot. iPhone photography. There we go. Guys, you got it. Okay, good. So also just want to mention our Google Plus page. If you're on Google Plus, and I hope you are, add us to your circles. There's a call to action for you. Plus one our page. There's another call to action. Plus Nicholas, oh no, that's mine. You can add me on Google Plus too, plus Nicholas Whitaker. But also go to our Google Plus page, plus Google for Media. Lots of tips and tricks and other information for you on how to use these different products, as well as examples from other journalists around the world. I'm very, very interested to see what you guys are working on, so definitely stay in touch with us. Also check out our website, google.com/mediatools, plus one our page. Everything that we talked about right now is in the Engage section here, but we really just scratched the surface. So there's a lot more resources available for you. If you have additional questions, what's that? Oh yeah, sorry. We also just regionalized that in Italian. Thank you so much. It's available in over 45 different languages now, including Italian. So if English is not your first language, you can also watch it in Italian. Also, mediatools@google.com. I know you have mentioned this email address about a dozen times, but I really want to stress the importance of it. Feel free to get in touch with us. Questions, comments, feedback, just say hi. Good restaurant recommendations. We like that too. Feel free to get in touch with us. Don't be a stranger. Thank you so much, everyone. website. It's actually Google Plus and YouTube. So for those of you who are interested, we'll be covering a little bit of Google Plus, talking a little bit about Hangouts, and then we'll be moving into YouTube and talking a little bit about both of those products and how you can use those as a journalist to help reach your audience. So that's generally speaking what we're going to be talking about today. If you give us just a few minutes, once these gentlemen get this worked out, then we'll get started. Thanks. Perfect. I do the at symbol. Alt. It's a good sign. You know what, we'll use my computer. I don't want to waste any more time because we're all waiting to actually get started here. So if we could actually just switch the projection over. The internet's not working out.
You need to change the resolution.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Now it's good.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll limp along here and hopefully this works okay. Get too far into this, I just want to kind of break down a few different things with Google+. I think also one of the comments that I get quite a bit, actually before I get into that, who here speaks English? Excellent, okay. So if I start talking too quickly, just raise your hand, I'll slow down and then start over again. This is a very casual environment. You know, if you have questions or comments, just shout them out. You guys, I know, aren't that shy here in Italy, so feel free to reach out and ask questions if you need. I think a lot of people have the misconception about Google+, that it's just another social media platform, like another Facebook or another Twitter or something like that. And there is a social component to it, and I definitely don't want to diminish that, because the social component to that is very strong. But as a journalist, there's specific features and products that are kind of built in within Google+, that can be used more effectively as a journalist to reach an audience or to help gain more followers. Part of that, we really won't have time to get into today. So there's issues like, or there's products like the communities built in within Google+, which is a very, very strong way to reach people who self-identify as being interested in a particular topic. So whether that be street photography or whether that be investigative journalism, there's communities built in within Google Plus of people that have already self-identified as being interested in that you can reach out to them, and unless you guys can get the Wi-Fi working on this one. My name is Nicholas Whitaker. We'll be going over kind of a wide range of topics today. The first thing we're going to start talking about is Google Plus. Who here has a Google Plus account? A few of you, excellent. So we'll be talking a little bit about Google Plus, how you as a journalist can use Google Plus to help reach your audience. Specifically what we'll be talking about with Google Plus is Hangouts and Hangouts on Air. Who here has done or seen a Hangout before? few of you? Yeah. Who here has watched a YouTube video before? Okay, that's a good place to start. If you guys have questions and you want to reach out to us, our email address is mediatools@google.com. This is a really useful email. I think a lot of times, for those of you who were actually in my session earlier today, I made the comment that a lot of people think that they can't reach people at Google. I just want to let you know that this email address is for you. It's for journalists to reach us. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you just want to say hi, you can reach out to this at this email address. Also, there's a website here, google.com/mediatools. This is really your one-stop shop for all of the information that you could possibly ever need to know about all the different products that we're going to be talking about today. Oh, good, that's working. Before we get... Okay, actually, let me log in first, because if I can't log in. So is this shift? So if I wanted to do like capital, if I wanted to use like a capital or shift, how do I get into shift? It's just this, right? Yeah, I'm not familiar with this type of keyboard.